Welcome to another edition of Art of the Kickstart. Today I'm super stoked because I am talking to a $1 million plus crowdfunding campaign that's just about to finish over on Kickstarter. We are talking with the CEO and co-founder of HEAVYS, Mr. Jonathan Habshush. Got it. This is an amazing product. I'm super amazed that it actually hadn't come out yet, because this is basically like this next generation audio company that's truly transforming headphones from a piece of hardware to the truly immersive experience that defines real world limitations. So, Jonathan, super excited to have you on the show today. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much, Roy, for having me. Super excited to be in here on here today.
Absolutely. So I got to go all the way back, right, for the audience, and learn, where did all this start? What inspired you to create HEAVYS?
Look, I mean, basically, we started a company without knowing anything about headphones, but everything about the people who want them. I mean, we're all metalheads, so we love metal music. We love like hard rock music. And my co-founder came to me and around like 2 years ago and said like, hey, I want to design a headphone that is like engineered for heavy metal, and I want to do it for myself. Like, you want to help me? And I was like, back then I was working at another venture, and I told him like, get the hell out of here. Like, there's so many headphone companies like in the market, like, there's no really like need for that. You go ahead, like, I'm fine, thanks. So he came back 2 months later with a kind of like finished, designed and engineered headphone, which he did himself. He has an engineering background, and said like, listen to it. And obviously it sounded shit. And I told him like, dude, that's not going to fly. That's like, total crap. But I really kind of like, appreciated his grit and his persistence and like, going forward and like creating this product. And I told him like, what, like, before you spend any money or like, anything in terms of like resources on going down that rabbit hole, like, let's test first, like, if this is like a product that like, people want and like our kind of like friends want as well. So we did what we know best as well, and started to kind of like, run campaigns online. We took a picture of the headphone itself and basically started to run campaigns and targeted different music communities. So we had the picture of the headphone and started to run like different campaigns on Facebook and said like, headphones for metalheads, headphones for a classic lover, headphones for like, country music. And we quickly realized that like heavy metal and everything around heavy metal, from like the hard rock space to heavy metal, was reacting very strongly to our ads. And that was the first moment where I was myself very intrigued by the whole idea and said to myself, interesting, people react to that. There might be, some opportunity there. And then we kind of like, took it a step further, and we started to kind of like, say, look, it's nice to have likes and clicks on your ads. Let's see if we actually can sell headphones, right? We took a picture of the headphone. We started like, a small Shopify account, and without a lot of like, knowing about headphones, like myself, speaking for myself, kind of like, added some like standard specs and said like, hey, we're selling headphones for metalheads. And within 6 days, we have like tens of thousands of sales. And I realized, oh shit, we didn't have a headphone. We had sales already generated. And I realized this thing is like, taking off way quicker than I thought. But that was the moment when I realized, okay, we're hitting some kind of nerve here. There's some kind of like, underserved community who really like, reacts to this product. That was basically like the burst moment of HEAVYS, when we decided like, to start a company. Obviously, we returned all the money like to our customers, and we kind of like, told them, hey, we can't actually like, produce it, and we reimbursed everyone on this. But that was really like, the first strong indication of like, okay, we're hitting on some kind of like, need there, and basically kind of like started to build the company around this kind of like, need, or this kind of like, significant reaction on our ads. And obviously like the rest is a little bit history. We were then at the moment where we realized, okay, shit, like me and him, we don't know nothing about headphones. Like, we need to get somebody who knows, his stuff very well. So that was the moment where as well, like Axel Grell joined as a co-founder and joined as a team. And my other co-founder, Yoav, as well joined. And we basically kind of started the company from there.
Jonathan, so you just dropped a ton of knowledge on this audience, and I'm going to go back, because I think what you did is truly the path of least resistance that a lot of startups just simply pass over, and they say, hey, I've got this problem. Everybody else in the world probably has this problem too, so let's just launch this thing. But what you guys did is really strategic and really sharp in terms of launching multiple different ad sets with targeting based on musical genres, which I think is smart as well. See if it fits. Were you then sending those folks back to a then targeted landing page that had that same musical genre on it and see if they signed up or were willing to pre-purchase? What did that look like?
Correct. Yeah. So it was basically like a very simple kind of like, landing page per genre. And we kind of very quickly realized, okay, there's like, just a simple PayPal checkout, no retargeting, no like, user optimization, no optimization at all. Like, you couldn't even like, pay with credit cards. So there's like a lot of like, layers in there where you kind of like narrow down your TAM. And we realized, okay, just by this very simple product, we already like, generated like, a pretty respectable traction where we said, okay, let's double down and let's see like, how far we can get with doing this. And I think that's a little bit like, the narrative that like we have at this company, like in general, is like, like we never assume we know something until like it's actually like validated and tested with like, at least, a critical mass of a couple of thousand people. And that's, I think, like, we did everything from there on, like, the design, the actual like features in the headphone, like, the language, the name itself, everything was tested, and everything was like, tested with like a sample group, which we felt comfortable that like, will as well succeed at scale.
That's one of the old sayings, right? Never bring an opinion to a data fight.
Correct.
Well, it's great that you guys obviously tested all of those things out. So once you were able to find that category, that niche of consumer in terms of the heavy metal market, is that when you then shifted the page, built out the Shopify store, kind of put that dirty prototype on the page and started to collect prepayment for product that you didn't even have yet?
No, so what we did basically back then, after like it was a different brand, when we kind of like did like the different brand name, different like design, different like language as well. But like what we said to ourselves then, obviously, like we refunded everyone and said like, okay, you know what, let's start from scratch right now. We have two options. Option one is like we just take like an over the shelf product and we brand it and we sell it, and it could be like potential successful like one off. Or do we actually like want to build like a company here that like has A, innovation, and B as well, like gives actual value to our customers? And my take and everyone's in the team's take was very quickly realizing, okay, we want to actually build here something that is like sustainable and like stay like hangs around for the long haul. So we said like we have to invent like the headphone from the ground up and actually like cater to, from a tech point of view as well, like to the needs of our customers. And B as well, like we have an opportunity here to build something around this niche of metalheads around the world, and around this community. And we knew this community because like we listened to like rock and metal like for all of our life, and kind of like grew up in that, and realized, okay, this is a big opportunity to kind of like differentiate ourselves through the narrative, and not necessarily through like commoditized technology. Like when I'm speaking now for the audio space, right? Like an ANC is an ANC. I mean, there's better one, there are worse ones, but like this is not like the reason why somebody will buy like a HEAVYS headphones, right? We have to come up with like true tech innovation, at the same time as well, like we have to build like a narrative where people can resonate not only like with our brand, but like with our values and our missions and what we were trying to do here. Or the outcome that you see on our Kickstarter is exactly like the kind of like proof of concept that like this is something that resonates with people.
Absolutely. Talk about proof of concept. I know as we're recording this, there's only 5 days left, but you've got over 6,300 backers, over 1.1 million raised. So congrats on the success there.
Thanks so much. I mean, I'm saying thank you as well to everyone who backed us, who's listening to this. I think like we were as well quite amazed by the massive traction we got, and I think the beauty around that is as well, like choose your people, right? And I think like we knew that like metal is special, and we knew the dynamics within the metal community, and we know as well that like metal, unlike pop music, sounds very similar anywhere you go. Like metal in Japan, or metal in Australia, or metal in like in Russia versus US or Brazil sounds exactly the same. And we realized that because we're listening to metal like all of our lives through different generations, different decades, and the ethos of metal, of being anti-establishment, more counterculture, is as well like playing into a very clear demographic. So it was really like building this company around the people that we knew, and creating not a problem, but creating like a solution for our own needs, right? So it was fun, and it wasn't easy, but it was fun to do so. So thank you for everyone who's listening and contributed. I think that's huge.
Absolutely. So you talked about your team, and give me some background in terms of when you were creating Heavies. What did that process look like? And then what does your team look like? And how have you guys gone about deciding what features to include in the final product?
Yeah, so we basically started with our four co-founders, which is Axel, Guy, and Yoav. Axel used to be like the lead engineer for Sennheiser. He's like a headphone guru and a true audiophile. He's behind the HD series, HD 600s, and others of Sennheiser. Guy is an engineer and a designer, so he have a bachelor's degree in engineering and a master's in design. So he kind of was kind of the building block of all of this. And my other co-founder Yoav, he used to work at Google as head of growth for Waze, so he's as well very familiar with online and growth hacking, and that was kind of the building block of this company. We very quickly realized, okay, in the process of let's start with the fundamentals, right? Because the stronger your fundament, the bigger the house you can build on it. And we realized, okay, we have to really go back up to square one and build a product that sets the fundament for whatever we want to do on top of that. And obviously, in the process of building the product, the first few people that we hired was an electrical engineer, a mechanical engineer. We have as well a product designer, which became as well our creative director right now, which kind of in the beginning super bootstrap. We put our own money into it. We paid everyone we could pay on freelance work, and then realized those people who did good work and were as well enthusiastic about what we're doing, and most importantly believed in what we're doing, those are the people then during the course of the last 12 months we hired full time.
Amazing. So let's talk about the active campaign. I know there's a few days left on it, but let's talk a little bit about the prep work, because I think what you touched on right off the bat on the interview was a lot of that marketing work that kind of was just, let's just test and find out. What were some of those other things that you guys did to put yourself in such a great position to overfund on day one and hit that $1 million mark, now towards the end of the campaign?
I think a Kickstarter campaign is it's like going into war, and you won't win a war without being prepared in the right way. So I think anyone who believes you can have an amazing product and you just go online on day one and sell something. I mean, there's always a chance, right? And there's always I'm super happy for anyone who works out that way. But we basically started through the last 12 months and did several additional validations. And when I say validations, we basically tested with a small sample size of customers, different price points, right? We tested as well different marketing slogans. We tested different language. We tested different approaches in how we want to show the product. We tested pictures versus videos, and that was helping us to understand, okay, what works, what does not work, right? In order to get more efficient. And then obviously before we went online, we did what is so-called a pre-campaign of having 2 weeks before the campaign collecting leads, right? To make sure that on the first day as well, we are having enough traction to kind of generate this minimum viable buzz that you need in order to step up in the algorithm and be as well be visible to the whole Kickstarter universe, and as well be visible to anyone who lands on your Kickstarter landing page. And then I think very easily is you need to be passionate about it, right? You won't sell anything to anyone if you're not passionate about it. And I think customers, and especially metalheads, feel bullshit from 500 meters against a sandstorm. So you have to be super passionate about it, and you have to be as transparent as possible. And I think as well the key to success now during the campaign was communication. I mean, it's like a relationship, right? The more you communicate, the clearer you communicate, and the better you interact with your customers, and the more serious you take them, the more credibility you build. And any Kickstarter product, or almost every Kickstarter product, has zero credibility on day one, right? Often it's a bunch of guys like us come together, have a great idea, want to sell to people on the internet a product or pre-sell. And it's crazy, right? Those people they back the product without knowing if they get it in the foreseeable future. They back the product without never felt or heard it in our case, and they back the product without actually having read a review or heard anything about this brand, or more so about the people behind it. So for us, it was very clear we have to be like, very out there, very close to our customers, and as well like very kind of like, put a face to this company, right? And to the people behind it. And I think like that's what's basically like is, I mean, I wouldn't call it the secret sauce, because like it's common sense, right? But that's basically like, what we try to do. And I think so far it went really well, and especially since we're building here a community-based brand, which is very much targeted to like metalheads and like hard rock fans. It was as well like important for us that like we are building this together with our community, and we're in constant touch with them and keep them posted and take them on this journey of starting a company from scratch, and feel as well that they are like have ownership in that.
Really interesting insights there. What I'd love to know also is what made you choose one, crowdfunding to do the launch, but also platform wise, Kickstarter versus Indiegogo?
Yeah, so I think that's kind of like for us, or at least like for myself, it was always like Kickstarter first. I mean, it's it's been around since years. It's like the most user friendly. It's the most like accepted one, and there as well like you have to go as well like what's more credible, what generates like as well like more trust. And obviously there were like past big successes of like startups launching like their products on Kickstarter, like Allbirds, Peloton, Nura. And I think we didn't have to like reinvent the wheel. We had to look and learn as well like from people who did it before us. And as Bismarck said, like he doesn't like to learn by own mistakes, and he likes to learn like by others. And I think like we just followed as well like a little bit like the blueprint that like other great entrepreneurs have done before. And was quite obvious like that we can't go too much wrong by doing what works.
Absolutely. So, in terms of your top tip for raising $1 million, over $1 million on crowdfunding, what would you say to the other aspiring entrepreneurs and startups out there?
I think first of all, choose your battles. Like be sure of what you want to do and like for whom you want to do it. I think what most entrepreneurs need to like really like reflect on is, why are you doing it? Not how are you doing it or what are you doing it. Why are you doing it? Once you figure this out, the why, the kind of like first layer, why do you want to like create this product? I think everything else falls in place. And I think the problem that we're solving initially to ourselves on creating headphones to enjoy like metal music resonated with a lot of like people out there. And I think that was kind of just like as well very clear to us, and obviously very clear to like the 6,000 plus backers that like backed us on Kickstarter. But the why question, I think it's the most important one before like you decide on like what and how. And then I think it's just like, take every single person who gives you feedback extremely serious. I mean, we've been on Facebook ads, on Instagram, on Kickstarter, like within like the comment sections, like every single feedback, be it good, be it bad, it doesn't matter if somebody shits on you. Every feedback is an opportunity for you either to learn or to convert him into like a customer. And I think we're learning so much right now. I mean, like the last 40 days being like online and getting like tons of feedback was probably like the biggest like learning curve in terms of like, what can we do better, where can we improve, what can we learn in terms of like future product development, and as well like the needs of the customer. I think there are a couple of like companies in the world who do customer success or customer support really successful, and there's no such thing as like making sure that like your customer gets a fast reply, your customer like feels taken serious, and your customer as well like has as well the right and like has as well like an influence on what you are doing. Because in the end of the day, the only reason like why we are succeeding is not because our product looks great or we have great tech. It's because our customers believe that like we are going to deliver on our promise.
Absolutely. You've definitely built up all of that trust with them. So, I'd love to know what the biggest surprise of your Kickstarter campaign has been.
The biggest surprise was we before we launched, we had obviously we bootstrapped, we put in our own money, we raised from friends and family, like whatever we can get in order like to take this off the ground. And it was funny because we thought about like, hey, in order to succeed on Kickstarter, we need to generate like a lot of like marketing buzz, meaning like we need to be in newspapers, we need to have interviews, And we kind of like went out and like, shopped for a couple of quotes for like PR agencies, and quickly realized that like we don't have the money for it, right? I mean, they charged us from like, quoted us from like $10,000 to $20,000 a month. And I mean, that was just so out of question, right?
Yeah.
And then we said to ourselves, you know what, like let's just go out there and see what happens, right? On the PR side, and kind of like hustled our own way and try to kind of like, get in touch with like, the newspapers and magazines ourselves. And obviously, because we are like so niche as well, and like nothing has done in that segment before, like everyone was very like supportive and like, appreciated like our idea. But what surprised me the most is like the traction we got, not necessarily like on a quantitative level, but like more the traction we got from all over the world. Like we had articles in Japanese from Japan, from Australia, India, again, Russia, Brazil, Chile, podcasts from like Spain calling us, hey, we want to support you guys. What you do is awesome. Like we don't charge you anything, and we didn't spend a single dollar. And I'm based in New York City, and one morning I woke up and there's a Forbes article about our company out there. I mean, like, a lot of people dream to like, land into Forbes. It just happened, and then I woke up and there was like, a 3,000 words long article about like our company. And I think that's obviously as well, like I was a bit surprised. It was luck as well, but like, we were prepared for that. Like, we had press kits ready, and we shared them for people who like, asked for us. So kind of like be prepared for it, for the best case, but be like, hope for the best, be prepared for the worst. But like, that was pretty surprising to see that this global phenomena of heavy metal, like really at its finest and covering us, like, from all over the world. That was pretty cool.
Amazing. Yeah, it definitely deserved the coverage just because of its pure uniqueness and the fact that nobody had done it before. So congrats on that, Jonathan.
Thanks, Roy.
Well, listen, this is going to get us into our launch round where I'm going to rapid fire a handful of questions. You good to go?
Sure. Let's go ahead. Fire away.
So what inspired you to be an entrepreneur?
What inspired me to be an entrepreneur? I think it's more about a purpose and passion driven life. I was very long, very long. I was like after grad school, I went to like, the corporate sector. I was a commodity trader actually in Singapore and Hong Kong. And I very quickly realized like, yeah, they pay well and like you kind of like in a golden cage, but am I happy? Not really. And I said to myself, really, I just want to do what makes me happy, no matter what. And I really feel like if you feel, or anyone feels that like he's doing what he enjoys doing, that success will come. I was going away of like, being led by like, hey, making money and like making as much money as I can, to how I want to like, build my life. What is like, the cornerstone, or like what makes me wake up in the morning and like enjoy what I do. And this is basically as an entrepreneur, or yeah, I don't want to label it as that, but like anyone who wakes up in the morning and does what he wants to do, I mean, good for them. And I think that's as well, like, the right way how to kind of like, to kind of like, have a purpose driven life. So that was as well pretty fortunate to choose that from. I mean, maybe people cannot just like choose whatever they want to do. There were a lot of like risks involved as well, but I think like in the end of the day, yeah, pretty happy with my choice and how I spent my day.
Nice. So if you could meet with any entrepreneur throughout history, who would you want to have a drink with?
Oh, that's a good question. Any entrepreneur around history? So there are a few, and I would maybe say Mark Rich. So I kind of like grew up always wanting to become kind of like working in shipping or in commodity trading, and I read the book The King of Oil when I was like 20 years old, and I was at the same time, like in a good and in bad way, fascinated by this persona of kind of like inventing a marketplace for commodities worldwide. And I think the savviness that like he had and the boldness he had at the time, where like nobody like was creating this market, was like insane, and he took amazing risks, and he was very convinced in what he's doing. Obviously, like he wasn't as well like the holiest of persons, but at the same time, like I would just like hear from him, like how was it to create like a global commodity market.
Impressive. That's a first on the show here. So appreciate you mentioning him.
Awesome. Yeah.
So Jonathan, what would be your advice that you would give to a new inventor or entrepreneur that's looking to launch their new product on crowdfunding?
Um, Again, any advice? Ask yourself why you want to do it, and I think as well, be ready to like be persistent, have grit, and like success will come. I think success comes in many shapes and forms, and it doesn't always have to be like selling $1 million. And I say that to every entrepreneur, like it doesn't matter how much you sell. it matters how you sell and how effective you sell. And I think that's the key lesson, right? Like Allbirds stopped at like $100,000 like on Kickstarter sales. And honestly, like I don't really like take myself like too important just because like I sold $1 million worth of product. Like I can go and invest $1 million and sell $1 million, right? Like I would like not make any money. I think it's important that like you're being effective in how you spend your money, and being effective as well, like in terms of like the returns on the advertisement that like you spend on. And I think that's a way more like important metric than like just like this very popular figure on Kickstarter, like you sold $1.2 million worth of product. I think it's more about like how effective you sell, and how effective you sell translate as well, like in how well your target group, your customers, and how much time you spend on thinking how well your product fits to your customers. And I think that's something that like people should think about, and not like how I get to $1 million really quick.
Absolutely. So what's one product that's made your life easier during the pandemic?
One product that made my life easier during the pandemic. Look, I would say it's my computer, my mobile phone. I think it's everything related to like connectivity. Obviously, I had a pretty hectic pandemic. I mean, I grew up in Switzerland. I'm Swiss. I moved to the United States. It was like the craziest of times, actually, like to move around the world. And just being in touch with like people, and being in touch as well like with my co-founders, being in touch with anyone who supported us. I think that was like great. Zoom, etc. Spend a lot of like time on there. And then just like on a personal level, books. I really got back into books. So that's a product obviously that like I still enjoy very much, and I think reading is one of the best things like in the world. And yeah, just like immerse myself in books, and learn from the people who wrote the stories, or any kinds of like biographies on people. So that was something that was really helpful as well during the pandemic.
Nice. So what's one book that you would recommend to our entrepreneurial listeners?
To the entrepreneurial listeners, interesting. So don't expect me now to kind of like tell an entrepreneurial book. I think one of the books that like I really like cherished was it's called like My Ishmael. I just have to look real up the writer, by Daniel Quinn. And it's a funny book because like it's an actual like it's a conversation between an ape and a human being. And the book is really all about like sustainability, and thinking about like long term what you want to do with your life and with our planet. And I think that was a book that like really like made me think of like how to approach things. And obviously like as an entrepreneur, you always like want to go fast, and like you want to reach like $1 billion valuation as soon as possible. But really think or rethink as well like what you actually want to achieve with your business. And I often say to anyone who runs a business, it's, for me at least, like it's not to become like $1 billion company like very, very fast. I think like we have to rethink about like how we build sustainable businesses. And I think like a $5 million cash flow company can be way, way more valuable over the long term than just like a $1 billion valuation. At the same time, I understand like as soon as you start raising money, you need to create like value for investors, and anyone like who's on board. But really think about like what we're building and how sustainable we're building. Made me really think about like how I approach business. And sometimes you have to take the step off the gas in order like to like put it down back to the gas. So that's something that like I think everyone should be aware of, or at least think about for once.
Absolutely. Last question in the launch round, Jonathan. You're doing great, man. And I know you guys are just about to finish your first campaign, but very interested to hear your take and what the future of crowdfunding looks like.
Wow, it's a big one. Look, I'm myself. I'm like really into tech, and obviously, like I spent a lot of time as well, like during the last couple of years, 4 or 5 years as well, in the whole kind of like crypto space and Web3 space, and obviously like everyone heard those buzzwords before. I don't need to like mention them again. But I really think that like there's a couple of like, just like from a kind of like underlying tech point of view, like things that like make crowdfunding like as well like more interesting through blockchain. And I think like this shift will happen, and Kickstarter already announced that like they're gonna like venture into that, if I'm not mistaken, or kind of like exploring this. I think that's obviously like just from a technical point of view how things are going to change. as well in terms of like bringing creators and backers closer together through any kind of like whatever virtual space, or like just like bringing products closer to the backers. And I think as well, in terms of crowdfunding, I think there's a couple of like different like, you know, approaches. I mean, like selling or pre-selling a product, or starting like, you know, with equity crowdfunding to get like people as well, like buy your product and like, you know, buy an ownership in like in your company. I think like those are like really like models right now that I see like emerging and like coming as well, like, you know, together as a final product. And then I think as well, like, you know, it's as well getting harder to do like, you know, to do crowdfunding. I mean, you know, with all the iOS updates and like, you know, with Google and all the kind of like data policies, it's getting harder to like reach people like online. So I think as well, like, you know, there will be a reaction from all of those platforms as well towards that, to make sure as well, like, you know, that every entrepreneur has as well, like, you know, the means to reach their people without as well, like, you know, intruding like their privacy, obviously. I mean, that's like, you know, first priority. But I think, you know, there will be movement, there will be things happening as well. And I think as well that, like, you know, so far, I hope as well to see like more smaller scale entrepreneurs, or like entrepreneurs like, you know, with smaller products coming on those campaigns, because it's not about how much you raise, it's how much you need, right? Like, and I really think that I encourage everyone who has even like a simple idea. There's a big power in the community, and there's a lot of people out there who are potentially able to believe in you. And everyone who doesn't have like, you know, things like, oh, my product is by far not as sophisticated, that's BS. Like, just go out there and try it. And I think that's going to make like crowdfunding, or like, you know, the entrepreneurs and the products on there like much more diverse and more fun, and happy to kind of like, you know, see what's coming on. So yeah, that's basically what I think about it.
Amazing. Jonathan, this has been awesome. This is your opportunity to give our audience your pitch, tell people what you're all about, where they should go, and why they should check out HEAVYS.
Cool. Guys, everyone who's listening, headphones for metalheads, heavys.com. We just launched on Kickstarter, like finishing our campaign in a couple of days. Obviously building here a next generation audio company that really transformed headphones from just a piece of hardware to much, much more. So we're going to announce a couple of like very, very exciting things to our backers in the coming months. And obviously like going to let everyone in on like what we're building on top of that, because like the hardware component is just a fundament, and we're going to come out soon with something that like will bring a lot of like value and joy, which is so important during these times to like the many metalheads out there. And we're here for you, and we do this together with you. So check us out. Going to be in Indiegogo as well after our campaign, in demand, and then going to launch around June, July, direct on heavys.com, where you can get the headphones like ASAP delivered to your house.
Amazing. Audience, thank you for tuning in to artofthekickstart.com. Make sure to visit the website for the notes, the transcript, links to the Kickstarter and the Indiegogo campaign. And of course, I got to thank our crowdfunding podcast sponsor, Product Type. Jonathan, thank you so much for joining us today and dropping knowledge. Rock on, my friend.
Rock on. You too. Thanks, Roy. Have a good one.
You too.